Have you ever imagined working in the middle of a 400-year-old historical site? Well, our guest for this episode of the Sent by the King podcast does exactly that and will be telling us about it. Hello, I'm Dave Toupin, president of La Société des Filles du Roi et Soldats du Carignan. Meet Peter Gagne, historian, archivist, and author, at his place of work at the archives of the Quebec Seminary in historic Quebec City. Peter is the author of Before the King's Daughters, the Filles Mariées, 1634 to 1662, an authoritative list of biographies and other information concerning the 262 brave, marriageable women who arrived in New France during that early period of the settlement of the French colony in Canada, and King's Daughters and Founding Mothers, the Filles du Roi, 1663 to 1673, a comprehensive two-volume biographical dictionary of the 768 king's daughters who arrived in New France, sponsored by King Louis XIV. It's an essential reference in English for anyone with French-Canadian ancestry who is researching their heritage. Peter's books are references frequently used by researchers in French-Canadian genealogy. Peter graduated with a bachelor's degree from Boston College. He has a master's degree in French from Boston University and a master's degree in history from the Université de Laval in Quebec. He's the reference archivist with the Direction des Collections at the Musée de la Civilisation in Quebec. He works for the Museum of Civilization in the archives of the Quebec Seminary. In this episode, Peter will describe some of the historic sites in his workplace. He will also tell us how to find it if you're able to visit the upper town of Quebec City. I started our interview by asking Peter about the Seminary of Quebec, where he works.
The seminary was founded in 1663 by François de Laval. He was appointed Bishop of New France and actually came over in 1659, a few years prior. The term seminary gets a lot of people confused. The Quebec Seminary is a group of secular priests. And by secular, it means that they don't adhere to any one, different congregation. They're not Benedictines, they're not Sulpicians, they're not Jesuits. They are just a group of regular priests. And it also has three different works, is what they call it. The first work is the minor seminary, or the petit séminaire in English. And that is basically a preparatory school for young boys. They have what they call the classic course. They learn French, Latin, literature, science, mathematics, physics. That's the petit séminaire, the minor seminary. And then the grand séminaire, the major seminary, is what people think of the seminary as being usually the schools for priests. Later on, the seminary also started the first French language university in North America, which is Laval University. And that was begun in 1852. And it was part of the seminary until 1970, when it got a new charter and became a lay institution, a non-religious institution.
Where is the seminary located vis-a-vis the city of Quebec?
The seminary is actually located in the upper town of Quebec. And if you're familiar with the city, there's a street, a very winding, steep street that goes from the lower town to the upper town. Right at the top of that street is the Bishop's Palace, and then behind that is, you see the seminary behind it. It's mostly walled in, but it's actually open. You can walk in.
And Peter, where's the Laval University now located?
Laval was on site here until about the 1960s, when it moved to Sainte Foy, which was then a suburb of Quebec City, but has since been amalgamated into the greater Quebec metropolitan area.
And could you tell us about the history of the site where the seminary is located?
The seminary was built on a site that was actually originally granted to Louis Hébert in 1617. We could still see the site where his first house was located in the interior courtyard of the seminary, was drawn out by a rectangle on the ground. And there's another circle a little bit further from that where Louis Hébert had his well. So it's on a historical site. Louis Hébert is considered the first colonist of Canada. He came over, actually he went to Acadia in the early 1600s, and he was one of the first colonists to come to the Quebec City site and settle. So the Louis Hébert's house actually has a direct link to the seminary. After Louis Hébert's death, his daughter and his son-in-law, Guillaume Couillard, sold the land to Bishop Laval. And the house was actually the first dormitory for the Petit Seminaire, the minor seminary. The Louis Hébert's house was actually in what is now the interior courtyard of the seminary. And all the buildings facing it are beautiful white walls. One of them has a sundial, and it's where the original seminary students had their recess. And if you go there today, the actual seminary students actually they handed it over to a private corporation called the Collège François de Laval. That's a secondary school. Those students still have their recess there today, and next to the outline of Louis Hébert's house, you can see the basketball hoops where they use to this day.
Tell us about Monsignor Laval's connection to this seminary and the site.
So Monsignor Laval arrived in Quebec City in 1659. Back then, there was no diocese. There was only different missionaries operating here and there. So his first task was to form the nexus of the church in Canada. In 1663, he formed the seminary to have originally started out as the school for priests. He formed the priests and to train them to go out and to administer not just to the native population, but also to the different settlements in New France. In 1668, that's when he founded the Petit Seminaire, the minor seminary, to prepare students either for the priesthood or for other jobs. That was just basically the preparatory school. And little by little, he realized that his ambition was getting bigger and bigger, so he needed more land for it. So he bought up all the surrounding land around the site here, and that's where the Bishop's Chalice was founded as well. And as the different seminary grew bigger, the site expanded and added more buildings until they added the Laval University, the original Laval University building.
And is there a special celebration going on this year, 2024, regarding Monsignor Laval?
2024 is actually the 350th anniversary of the founding of the Diocese of Quebec. While Laval arrived in the colony in 1659 and founded the seminary in 1663, it wasn't until 1674 that the diocese was actually created. And it only took that long until 1674 to be named Bishop of Quebec, because until that time, he couldn't afford the papal bulls that actually officialized Quebec becoming a diocese.
And when the public come to visit Quebec City, what can they see in the surrounding area to memorialize celebrity figures like Louis Hébert and Monsignor Laval?
So in the courtyard, the interior courtyard of the seminary we talked about, there is a plaque to Monsignor Laval. Just outside the walls, if you continue up the top of the hill, at least the upper town, there's a post office building, and facing the road, there's a nice statue of Laval who's actually overlooking his works of the great work of the seminary. In the nearby park, which is named the Montmorency Park for François Montmorency de Laval, there's a statue of Louis Hébert and his family. Louis Hébert is at the top of the pedestal. To the right is his wife, Marie Rollet, who's reading to their children. And on the left, there's a statue of Hébert's son-in-law, Guillaume Couillard, who later owned the house that became the first Petit Seminaire. And what's even better is on the back of the statue, there is a very long plaque that lists all the names of the original settlers, the founding settlers of Quebec. There's a list of at least 20 to 30 family names. So if you come up to Quebec City, try to see if you can find your family name there.
Thank you, Peter, for that informative introduction to the Grand Seminary in Quebec City and its surrounding area. These are sites that are worth visiting if you have a chance to travel to the old town of Quebec City. You have the chance of possibly making connections to the history of some of the ancestors you're researching. In our next episodes of Sent by the King, I will continue my interview with Peter Gagne. He will show us some of the fascinating historical documents and items available to researchers at the archives, and he will connect some of the contents of the archives with the Filles du Roi and the Carignan Regiment. You can find links to Peter's books on the Fille du Roi and Fille Mariée in this episode's description. Please send us your comments and suggestions for topics for this podcast to the email address listed in the description. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.